Welcome to the 16th episode of Buckle Up with Simon and Brian, an ultra running conversation. How are you doing this evening, Simon?
I'm doing great. I haven't done any crazy adventure this weekend, probably. So I'm doing all right. How about yourself? How about your knees?
My knees are doing well. I'm just getting back into running a little bit, just nice and easy, nothing too crazy. Still focusing on walking the dog. I'm heading to the high school state track meet as well. I have a 3,200 2 miler. That's 2 miles for those people that can't do meters. That's 2 mile track star, and she is competing at the Colorado state level.
Oh, that's cool. I'm curious, Brian. So your dog Bailey, does he have a little backpack for hiking?
Bailey is a girl, and she does not have a backpack. She likes to eat backpacks, though.
Because maybe we should get a little backpack for Bailey's. But I don't know what would be a good company for that. What do you think?
I bet you UltrAspire could hook us up with a dog backpack. I bet you they could make something really nice. Maybe even something with a PFD in it, like a flotation device, because Bailey's not much of a swimmer. So that's a great segue because we could ask Bryce Thatcher, the owner, president of, and creator of UltrAspire. UltrAspire is at the top of the spear in the ultra running community in making running vests, running waist bags, and lumens, their lighting system, all of which I own and use myself in all of my adventures. I will come clean and let you know that I have been on the UltrAspire team as a team ambassador since 2020. So I'm in my fifth year with UltrAspire, and it has been nothing but great. As an ambassador, some I get some promo deals, but I also get some demo models to wear, test, and review and give feedback to them on what works and what doesn't work. So it is tested by actual athletes and middle of the pack athletes like myself, not just the front runners, right? Not just our fast guys on our team, like Uncle Billy there.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really good with UltraSpire. I'm not an ambassador with their brand, but I do use their waist bag quite a lot. That's kind of my go-to for a waist bag, and it's very high quality. And something I really admire, we met Bryce at Cocodona 2 weeks ago. He was there, I mean, it's the CEO of the company, and he's there. He's with athletes. He's giving you drinks. He's pouring water on you. So really, I think it's a company that is for runner by runner, and I think that's great. Taking feedback from runner and really making sure that their product is at the avant-garde of what is up and coming right now, and being very innovative, and they're very listening to what runners and hikers or whatever athletes are using their product are demanding, and they're delivering on that. So I think that's really, really cool. And yeah.
Some of the best brands, some of the best companies come out of fulfilling a need. And Bryce is a mountain athlete and a legend in the space. And he created this company and these brands out of a need to be able to move freely in the mountains. And it has transpired all the way to the current brand, which is UltrAspire. He started in 2012. They're based out of St. George, Utah. If you haven't heard of them, check them out, ultraspire.com. At the end of the episode, he gives us the email address to get in contact with them if you have questions or anything at all. It was a great conversation with Bryce, and we really appreciate his time and his contribution to the space. Without further ado, here's Bryce Thatcher with UltrAspire. Welcome to the show, Bryce. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
We're hanging in there. Simon and I were just talking about it. We're still recovering from Cocodona, and we just got done seeing you at Cocodona. You were up there on the top of Lane Mountain with a cooling station, which was much appreciated by all the participants, particularly and especially me, who's from Colorado and did not deal well with the heat on Lane Mountain. So
Right.
we appreciate you being out there.
Yeah, it was an awesome experience for me, and I should say that I'm also recovering from Cocodona too. Even though I didn't run one step, it was very emotional, very exciting, fun to see everybody out there, and holy cow, what an amazing event! So I'm recovering as well, but in a different way.
Bryce, I wanted to back up a step and get a little bit of the backstory of you, of Bryce Thatcher, how you find yourself as the president of UltrAspire, making backpacks for ultra athletes, making lighting systems, water carrying, handhelds, all of it. How did you get yourself here? Where did this come from? How did this begin as a root somewhere?
It's honestly it's a long story, but I'll be brief and I'll just kind of tell you kind of how I got started. Ultimately, I grew up on the Idaho side of the Tetons, and I just loved running around the mountains. This would have been in the late '70s, early '80s, and I would take my running shoes and just run around the mountains, and I started getting really fast in the mountains, and I realized that doing the things that I was doing, which is really mountain running, I needed to carry things with me. So I needed fluids, I needed energy foods and things like that. And I would go up. I had this little orange backpack, and I would throw it on my back, and it was a Camp Trails backpack, and it had just kind of like a little book bag. And I would put a bottle of apple juice or a bottle of water in it, a jacket, and away I would go. And it used to drive me crazy because I was always going for time, and it was just personal achievement. There was no official races. Honestly, at the time, there was probably very, very few even trail races in the world. And it was, for me, it was just fun. I liked the idea of going out and trying to get faster in the mountains. And I, I realized that every single time I had to stop, take off this Camp Trails backpack, pull my bottle out, pull my food out, that it was taking time. And so it was at that point that the thought went in my mind. It's like, how can I kind of alleviate this struggle that I'm having, for me to set these times, personal times in the mountains. And it was right after that I realized, hey, my mother and my grandmother taught me how to sew, and it was just one Sunday afternoon that I decided, hey, I'm going to make something that will make this easier for me. So I sat down at my mom's sewing machine and took some old Levi pants, cut them up, and then I made a pack that I wore around my waist that actually carried an old bicycle water bottle in it, and it allowed me to carry fluids on the go. And I thought it was a great innovation, so I started using it. And then fast forward a few years, I had been using it, set a few FKTs in the mountains, and just had a blast doing it. And I had this constant drive for how to put everything at my fingertips so that I didn't even have to slow down to get what I needed on the go. And then then fast forward a few years into my college years, I ran track, cross country, and was also on the cross country ski team. And I had teammates that came up to me, and they saw this little pack that I was wearing around, and they said, hey, will you make one of those for me? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I can make one of those for you. And so I literally went home from college, went to my dad, and I created this little business plan, and it was a single page business plan. And I said, will you loan me $1,000? And this is what I want the $1,000 for. I want to buy a sewing machine, $960, and I want to buy some fabric. And then I listed everything that I wanted to make. I wanted to make ski bags, cosmetic bags, duffel bags. And I went through this list of everything that I thought I could make. And then at the very bottom, and I'm going to make some running packs too. And my dad, he was always so supportive of me. Man, what an incredible individual. He just said, sure. So he gives me the check. I drove from their home on my way back to college, went by the sewing machine supply place, bought the sewing machine, moved it into my apartment, a single one-bedroom apartment, and started sewing backpacks. And then I started making them for my teammates, and then the rest is kind of history. I started my first company, which was Ultimate Direction, kind of the original hydration pack company, and that's how I got started. Really, it was just me trying to get faster in the mountains, trying to create ways that are going to help me be faster in the mountains.
Wow, that's a great story, Bryce. I love hearing it. I know I've heard it before, but it's always great to hear it again. I have two questions for you. Initially, the two short ones. One is, do you still have that sewing machine?
Yes, I still have that sewing machine, and I still have my first pack I sewed in the my apartment. I don't have the first pack I sewed on my mom's sewing machine. I have no idea where it went. My mom was kind of the master of taking things to the thrift store, and so whenever she'd clean out the closets and stuff, away it goes, and it's like, where did that go, Mom? I probably took it to the thrift store.
So, Bryce, I think I love the story. I think it's great. I know you were moving fast through the mountains. I think you may not have like totally been clear on it, but you did have some FKTs in the Tetons, and I think we know the guy that might have broke him. One of them, right? Who broke your FKT?
Well, the most prominent one was the FKT on the Grand Teton, and I did it twice. It was in 1981 and then 1983, and it was ascent descent. And if any of you know anything about the Grand Teton, it's not only just running, but it was also technical rock climbing as well too, and that was kind of my specialty. I like to run into the mountain and then climb the mountain and then run out of the mountain. So the person that actually took it down was Killian Jornet. He's the one that took it down, and then after that it was Andy Anderson that took that one down. So it was 29 years though that it held before he came and took it away.
Yeah, I remember the hats when you guys made the hats with the FKT on the inside of it there.
Exactly.
That was great.
Yeah, it was kind of fun.
I also wanted to touch a little bit on your college career. And I know you kind of like transitioned, obviously, with the sewing machine and this business plan, but you were a pre-med student. And how did you think backpacks were going to replace a medical education? How did you just kind of wing it? What was the thought process there?
Well, the reality is, I just thought, at the time I was collecting $400 a month from my parents to be a student. And I was also working full time at the Athlete's Foot, a running shoe store. And I just felt I wanted to be independent. I didn't want any money to come from my parents. They were always very supportive of me, and they were more than willing and able to do it. But I just wanted to be independent. And so I just thought, college kids start businesses all the time. Why don't I just start a business, and I'll be able to support myself with the business, and then I won't have to get any money from my parents anymore. And so initially, my idea was to just start it as a way to make money to get me through college. And I planned on going into medical school, and I wanted to specialize in sports medicine, probably orthopedics. But once I got into the schooling, I really, really loved the athletic side of things, the kinesiology, the biomechanics, all of that. But I also, with the business being started at that time, I realized how much I love the creative process. Being able to, I would see a problem, and then I would say, okay, how can I solve this problem for the athlete? Because I constantly had athletes coming to me and saying, I need something that does this. Most of my development over the years was always based on an event initially. It's like, I have this event that I want to do. How can I carry the gear to make this function? And so I realized that I loved that process, the process of solving a problem for the athletes, whether it was myself, because a lot of times I was still doing a lot of stuff all over the world, honestly. And I would build stuff for myself, but then I had a lot of athletes that I was building stuff for. I loved that process, going from concept to reality. And then once I create the reality, then it's like, wow, that worked. That's helping me. That's helping somebody with what their goals are. And I realized that I liked that process so much that the more and more I got into school, I started changing my classes. And it's like, I want to take a sewing class. I want to take a marketing class. I want to take an accounting class. I want to take classes that help me figure out how to run this business that I'm really enjoying. And so it just evolved to where I finally just said, why am I doing this? I enjoy the business, but I don't enjoy, and I enjoyed learning. But I didn't want people to tell me what I needed to learn. I wanted to learn what I thought I needed to learn to be successful at what I was doing. And so finally I decided that I would just continue on full time in business and not continue on with the medical career. And I guess one thing I'd like to say too is, I have 5 kids myself, and my wife has 3 kids, so we have 8 kids together. But with the exception of 2, 6 of our 8 kids are all in the medical field. So we have doctors, nurses, nurse anesthetists. I've got orthopedics. I've got urologists. And so they've all continued it on, and I'm still making backpacks. So.
Yeah, but I mean, it's creative problem solving and learning. It's very similar. What you described to me described a little bit some of the research I did, which was more in the medical field, but in drug delivery, and kind of thinking of problem that we're trying to resolve. We're trying, let's say, to bring the drug to the brain. Let's find a solution for that. And nobody would tell me what I need to study. I will figure it out. And it's interesting to think of some of the greatest medical discovery came from an overlap with other field, like just
Right.
suture comes from sewing. I don't remember where, like, I think it was some lady that was like, hey, like, that's what we do when we have 2 fabrics that are stripping apart. Let's do the same for the skin. And there you go. So I think the way of thinking is very similar and very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's really true. The way of thinking and just the problem solving process has many parallels in all fields. You have a problem, how are we going to solve it?
Yeah. And it's a problem that was not resolved. So you need creative people like you to come up with a new solution, a solution that nobody was thinking of. And you pick from different aspects of your life, and then you apply that to a specific niche problem, say, I'm resolving this thing. And afterwards, people see the solution and say, yeah, of course, like this is so smart. This is so genius. Make me a backpack, like make me one. So that's amazing.
I like how you just did that, like a light bulb goes off. And that's usually, the best ideas are usually the ones that when everybody sees the idea in fruition, they think, wow, that's a no-brainer. Why didn't somebody think of that a long time ago? And that's usually the best ideas, the ones that just, makes the light bulb go off in everybody's head that wow, that's really cool. Why didn't we do that a long time ago?
Yeah, and I think you're really good at UltrAspire at being close to athletes. And that's important. You can hear what their concerns are, their problems are, and that will help improve your product all the time. And staying close to athletes, I think, is super important. Athletes of all levels. You have the Jeff of this world, and then you have little people like Brian. Sorry, Brian, but you're not Jeff Browning. Don't take it the wrong way.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, you have a few more years, right?
Well, I think that's a really good point, though, because, one thing that we've tried to do, and that's one of the things, honestly, I really loved about Cocodona, up at Lane Mountain, we were at the, Brian and you guys, 32, 33 mile mark, something like that. But I loved it because I saw every single runner come through. And because of that, I helped everybody that I could, and I helped everybody with backpacks. I had to fix a few backpacks of a different brand. And obviously I'd fix our backpacks as well, too, while I was there. But the thing that I liked about it is, to me, the passion was the same for me, whether it was the first people through, because I just saw them for like 3 seconds and they were gone. But the people that just melted my heart away are the people that maybe their body physique isn't the Jeff Browning's body physique, and they are still out there and they are still doing it, and their struggles are the same. And they would sit down and they would talk to us, and we would help them, and they were sick. And I thought, holy cow, and the reality is that side of the market for me is just as important as the really fast guys. And we try to listen to all levels, because their struggles are, honestly, it's probably harder to be out there for all 5 days than it is to be there, or 6 days, whatever it is, than it is to be out there for the shorter period of time. Their gear carrying capacities are different. Everything is different, but they're still doing the same event. And that was just magical to me, to be able to see that firsthand.
Yeah, and I think you were in a good spot to see the pain, because you were very much, for those who are not familiar with the course, this is the aid station after the long segment, the first long segment on the first day, the big climb in the middle of the freaking day. And I think for some people, that's kind of a wake up call of, oh my God, what did I get myself into? You're just at mile 30 something, which doesn't sound like much, but for mid packer, you feel like total crap by then. Like this is not the beginning of the race. You feel totally pooped out, and then you see these guys cooling you down. It's like, oh my God, I need to sit down. So yeah, it was a good place to see human emotion for sure.
Yeah, that was really cool. So
Bryce, there are, I don't know, I'm going to make it up, but there's probably like 8 title sponsors for Cocodona 250 when you look down the sponsor list.
right.
And I didn't see any other presidents of the other companies out there. So, I mean, it speaks volumes to your passion for the sport and your willingness to be out there in the element. It was the hottest part on the course, on the hottest part of the day. For all of us, including you guys at that aid station. Of course, you had a cooling station, but you were doing the work to help all the athletes along. And it was just so well appreciated. And I just think it was so it was just leaps and bounds beyond the other brands that are out there. Nothing against the other brands. I love all the other brands too. But it speaks so much to your ethic and your work ethic and your business model. And we really appreciated it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that a lot. I really do. I love the athletes, and that's why I say I'm recovering a little bit from the race, because I found myself, I mean, it was very emotional. I found myself in tears a lot. I felt, I've never done a 250-mile race. I've done a lot of FKTs, self-supported stuff, but I found myself feeling their pain. And it's just like I knew that they were suffering. I could feel the suffering. I could sense the suffering, and for me, that's good, because that helps me stay much more connected with them and understand everything that they're going through, because it's tough.
It is tough, and I think it is tough also, particularly for and we said it just before the call, for people that have a normal job. Like, we're on a podcast right now. This is for funzy. This is not our job. And people that were doing the 250, sure, you have professional athletes, but you have moms and dads and just out there living crazy adventure, but that's not their full-time job. And the limited time that you have for training, you have to make the most of it. And when you go out there and you race, maybe you underprepared. This is the biggest challenge of your life. And then having support from people is amazing. I think Brandon is right, and we're not trying to be suck up here. Like, I really felt like for the people, by the people vibe from you guys, and I think that's amazing, especially when we see what's happening with the sport, which in my mind is kind of a democratization a little bit, or it's not just for elite runner anymore to do these races. It's for normal people. And you're out there, you're sweating with us in the middle of the day. And that's something that I hope people appreciate, what it means in terms of what you do at UltrAspire. I think that's really inspiring.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah.
I mean, I saw Zach on the course pacing someone. So that was like, hey, aren't you the UltrAspire guy? What are you doing here?
I know.
The best for me.
It was such a cool experience for him too. Zach's an absolutely amazing person, and he, the thing that was really cool about him though is not only, I think we had 15 athletes slash ambassadors there for UltrAspire team, but there was probably, I don't know, 20 other people that Zach knew by name. And they're non-athletes and he just treated them like gold, and it was really cool. And it's one of the things that we've always said. That's one of the big jugular issues with me from a business standpoint. Not that I want to talk about the business in general, but is I want it to be a real human experience. When the phone rings, I want somebody to answer the phone. I want the people that work for me to have the same passion for the sport that the people who participate in the sport. I want them to understand the people. I want them to be able to help them. And Zach would just say, hey, so-and-so, man, it's so good to see you. And they're like, how do we know you? Well, I've talked to you on the phone. You ordered that pack from me 2 weeks ago, and how's it going and stuff like that. And that's what we try to come across with our company. So just to really connect with the people at all levels.
Bryce, I want to let's talk about the business at a surface level just for a moment. I believe that you started UltrAspire itself in 2012, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And so I think that's about 12 years ago. And you're up there competing with the major brands, rightfully so. But but I think that people might not know. I've been to the headquarters. I came and visited you. Actually, I came and visited you guys after I paced Simon
Uh-huh.
at Badwater
Headwater.
last year. On my
Oh,
way
cool.
home, I stopped through St. George and I stopped into your guys' office. I went to the upstairs garage. I might have seen that original sewing machine.
Yeah,
Um,
you've seen it. It's
yeah,
there.
yeah. So yeah, I knew the answer to that question, Bryce. But in short order, I think outside people looking in would think that when I call the hotline number or whatever
Right.
it is that I'm getting some big corporate office or something along those lines. How big is UltrAspire? I know all these answers, but I think that it's something to speak upon. Is how many people work at UltrAspire, and the amount that you guys are doing is just incredible.
Yeah, we're a very small company, and I'll admit that. And I, well, just to back up a little bit, I had Ultimate Direction, sold Ultimate Direction. Then I worked for Nathan for 7 years, and I did all of their design work for 7 years, and kind of brought Nathan forward into the industry as well too. And one of the things that I really learned with my time at Nathan is I did not like the large corporate culture. Um, and they're a good company. I'm not dishing on them at all. I love the people there. I love the original owner. He's a great man. But I felt that decisions were being made at the corporate level that always weren't in the best interest of the athlete.
Hmm.
And that bothered me. And so we are a small company. There's about 9 of us, not counting our manufacturing. We do have 2 factories that we work out of in Vietnam, and one in China as well too. So we do have production workers that work for us, but we are a small company. I do all the R&D myself still. Brian's been into our office. Any of you are welcome to come by at any time. We'll show you upstairs. It's kind of a messy R&D area with lots of fabrics and lots of buckles. And I have 12 sewing machines. I have one of everything that's available in our factories. And I want to be able to duplicate things. And my process has really changed during COVID, because it used to be that I would travel to the factories and spend a week in the factory, and then I would have a dozen sewing machine operators that would help me make samples and stuff like that. And during COVID, when I couldn't travel anymore, I'm just like, really, I have the skill set that I can sew anything. I can make anything. I can make all the patterns. I can design them, put it together. And so we really switched gears to where I started making all my initial samples myself, do all the pattern work, make the samples, sew the samples, and then I ship the sample off to the factory, and then the factory will duplicate it once we get it to a point. And this is where the athlete team really comes in, is I'll build a prototype and I'll send it out to them. And Brian's been involved in some of this too. And then he'll give this incredible feedback to us. Yeah, it's working, it's not working, and this is why it's not working. And then we'll try to do the perfection process and the initial development in the United States. I wish we could do all of the labor there, but it's just not possible in this day and age to do it all. But anyway, we are a small company, to make a long answer to your question. But we like it that way. And I've told everybody, yes, we want to grow. Yes, we want to be able to change the lives. I really want all the people that work with me to be their career. I want them to be able to stay with us. I want us to be able to grow. I want us to be together. I want us to be able to grow together. And it's very much a family environment, including our athletes. And I never want the company to be so big that we lose that feel. And that's kind of where I draw the line a little bit. We always answer the phone. We always want to talk to the customers. We always want to help with their problems. And we can't do everything. But, we get like a few days ago, we had an athlete who needed a little adjustment on the pack or something like that. And so we take it upstairs and we make the adjustment on the pack and we turn it around in a couple of days, and then off it goes to the athlete. We want to keep that feeling in the company. And so we're small, but we're proud of it. We want to grow. We want, but not to grow so much that we lose that personality of the company.
Yeah, what I was getting at the point is that you guys are small behind the scenes, but you guys are just doing such great things. When I look around at like a race like Hocodona, it seems like a majority or a fair amount of the people are wearing the UltrAspire gears, and it is just great to see. I met people from all over the place, and they were asking about my lights. They were telling me they had the same light in their other backpack, and just really cool to share. So I think it doesn't feel small from the outside looking in, but
Right.
I know inside looking out that it is pretty small. There's no
Right.
corporate office. There's no penthouse office space up top.
Right, exactly, exactly. And the reality is, I mean, I had a conversation with one of our distributors, our Costa Rica distributor, at the running event a few months ago,
Mhm.
and I'm getting at the stage in my life, where I'm over 60 now. I'm still either running or rock climbing every single day. I'm still active, and I love it. And I was talking to him. It's just like, I'm at the stage in my life where I'm like, what have I done in my life? What have I contributed to this world? And I have wonderful, incredible kids, and they're all active. They're runners, ultra runners, incredible kids. And I'm very grateful for that. That's one of I'm most proud about that. But then from a career standpoint, I'm like, what have I done? And then he turned to me and he says, what do you mean? Have you done? He says, every single pack in this industry, every single person in the last 35 years, what they have done personally and how they have been able to accomplish their goals and be able to basically go through the process of, I have a goal, and and then what does it take to accomplish it? And then when they accomplish it, they become a better person, a stronger person, a more powerful person. They contribute to the whole world. He says, what do you mean? You've contributed to this industry in a way that most people haven't done. And it made me stop and think, and it's like, yeah, and that's been my passion. I absolutely, every day I love to go to work. I love what I'm doing, because I talk to people like you. I get calls. A lot of our athletes, they'll text me. I got a text about an hour ago from one of our prominent female athletes, and she's like, okay, I'm doing this race, this race, this race. What do I need to do? What can you help me with? And I'm like, well, wait, let's do this. Come by the office and we'll figure it out for you, And that's I love that, because it's me, helping people with accomplish their goals.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you would really struggle doing if you were in a larger size organization. I mean,
Yes.
having worked myself, in my industry, I'm in more pharma, and I work at Pfizer, where like you never meet the CEO, and if he comes in your state, the whole elevator is booked for him because he's so important, and that you can't use that
Right.
elevator. So like, forget about meeting the little people, all the way down to to lab at university and smaller size company where you have a more open door policy. You want to talk with the CEO, you just barge in and you say, hey, like I have an idea and let's talk about this. So I
Right.
think, I mean, based on, I, I'm way younger, right? But based on where you are in your career, it's about what you want to do and the type of role
Mm.
that you want to have. Do you want to meet with shareholder and talk about how the shares are doing and these sorts of things? Or do you want to be close to actually your passion, which is
Right.
running, being the mountain athletes? And that company of 9 people, I mean, it's not the size that matters, like we say, it's what you do with it, and
Right.
that's what matters, right? So I think that's
Right.
really cool
Exactly.
that you
It
you
is.
find your passion and you pursue it.
Yeah, and even my kids, a couple of them who are doctors now, and a lot of nurses and stuff, they're like, Dad, you have such a good life. And I'm like, I do have a good life. I mean, the reality is, you think about it, every single time I go on a run, it's my passion, but it's also my work,
Yeah.
and so not a lot of people can say that in their careers. And that's how my career has been my whole entire life, is everything that I'm doing, all of everything that I do, and from riding my bike to running to rock climbing, whatever, kind of lends to my job. So
I'm curious about that, actually. One of my biggest fear is, like, obviously, I have my YouTube channel is doing pretty well, but this is just, it's for fun, right? And
yeah.
I can't imagine my hobby becoming my profession, because then what's kind of my escape,
Right.
to like, I don't want to talk about like making backpack right now. I'm like, I want to disconnect. And
Hmm.
does that ever kind of, I don't know if you're able to separate the I'm running for funsy right now, or like it's always kind of back of your head a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, that's a really, really, really good question, because a lot of people, and myself included, I use running to escape, because sometimes you have to get away from things. But for some reason, I've been able to find joy in that. Like a few months ago, I was struggling with some personnel problems, and this was back in November time. And I'm like, what do I do? How do I handle this? And you know what my instant solution was? I'll figure it out, but I need to go on a really long run. And I need to go to the top of a mountain, and I need to sit there, and I need to meditate and say my prayers and think about it, and kind of try to figure out a solution to this problem. And it just took me running like 2,000 feet to the top of this honking mountain. I sat down for like 2 hours up there. And at the end of my time on top of the mountain, I knew exactly what to do. And it just came. And so I think that I've figured out over the years how to still continue to use it as my source of inspiration, to be able to, and sometimes it's problems, sometimes it's finance, sometimes it's human resources, sometimes it's things like that. But I still use that as a way to clear my head and to gain clarity in what I need to do. But then I also use it as a time to create too. So that's where the product ideas come. And honestly, one of my favorite things to do from a product standpoint is, I've worked with Jeff Browning for a long time and a lot of athletes for a really long time. But I just like sitting down. I work on the floor a lot, but Jeff was on this table that right here in my dining room where I'm sitting right now. And it was after we had developed the Bronco race vest. And I developed the Bronco race vest for him, and he wore a prototype to win the Zion 100. And it was a prototype that I built in my office here in St. George, and I was sweating bullets the whole time. I crewed him. My wife and I crewed him at the race. And my wife's like, holy cow, that's the hardest race I never ran, just being the crew for him, because everything was just scientific, it was just like clockwork, everything. You'd be here at this time and here at this time. But for me, it was a whole different level, because the pack he was wearing was a prototype. And it was one that I built myself with my own hands in my own sewing machine, like 2 weeks before, and that was really cool. But then it was like a month later, we're sitting down at my table again, and he's like, you know what I need? I've got Hard Rock coming up, and I need a Bronco with a little more capacity. And so we created, I literally pulled out a napkin, we drew it. And then like 2 weeks later, I sent him a sample that I'd built again. And then he did the double crossing the Grand Canyon, I think, set the FKT on that in another prototype that I built in my office, and that just brings so much passion to me. It's just like, wow, that's fun.
That's so cool.
Bryce, in a roundabout way, I've been in the sport for quite a long time, and in a roundabout way, I've been almost following all of your build outs, if I'm being honest, without even knowing it, quite honestly. Way back when UltrAspire came to, I won a foot race and got a lifetime pro deal through UltrAspire, which actually they still honor, but of course I don't use it now.
Yeah.
But I had a Wasp, and I'm pretty sure that was one of your original creations. It had it almost had the Basham back through pocket that we currently have in the UltrAspire model.
Right.
I don't know if you recall that one.
Ultimate Direction Wasp, yes.
The Ultimate Direction Wasp, yep, and it had a little more straight back, and the shoulder straps rubbed my neck a little bit before you had some more curvature to them. But yeah, and so I've been around for a while, working through the packs as you've been creating them with different brands and different companies. But that's a leading question to is where are we going in this sport, in this space with gear and backpacks and handhelds and Are we at the top yet, or are we just scratching the surface? Where do you think we're going to go with this?
Well, every time it's interesting, because every time I come up with a new design, I think, okay, that's it. That's the Shangri-La. Nothing's going to ever be better than that. But I think that as other technologies come along, for example, as food technologies come along, and nutrition technologies come along, and hydration technologies come along, and the whole, different ways of eating and diets and things like that come along, it kind of changes the dynamics to where the athletes are performing at a much higher level than they were a few years ago. I can remember back in Ultimate Direction days, this would have been around 89 or something like that. I don't even remember the guy's name, and I apologize for this. And if he hears this podcast, he'll have to remind me. But he
doesn't listen. He doesn't listen.
he was skiing. He was skiing. He wanted to ski across Greenland and set an FKT for skiing. And so I built him a custom pack. And his diet was cubes of butter. And he was literally eating cubes of butter because it was the highest concentration of calories in the smallest amount of space. And he had to take everything with him because it was self-supported. And so you look at that was, 30 something years ago to where they are now and where things have gone. I think that everything will continue to evolve. And right now I see, especially with the current trend towards these longer races, and the longer races are requiring you to carry a little bit more. The 100 milers, a lot of them, there's still some original ones around, but a lot of them, they have aid stations every 5 miles. And so it turns it into kind of a sprint where you don't need to carry much. You just have a handheld, or you have a really lightweight vest, and you just but with these races, I'm totally enamored by them because sometimes you're 20 miles between aid stations. And so you've got to carry a lot of stuff with you. And then you have to deal with the extremes. You have to deal with the extreme heat and the extreme cold. We had athletes her bottles were freezing at night. And so in my mind, instantly my mind kicks into, okay, I've got the heat of the desert where they're drinking hot water, and what is the ideal temperature for the water? And so then it's freezing at night. And so then I start thinking, it's like, okay, I think a real possible improvement is water temperature control. How can you make it so that it's going to work for these new events that are going from low to high, from high temperatures to low temperatures, and how can you make it so the product functions in those extremes? And I think that evolution will continue, because we'll probably see a lot more development in like high mountain running with leaking peaks together with, there's a lot of development all along there, and they all come with special needs and special requirements. And so because of that, I think that the products that I'm involved in with it, which is really lighting and packs and carrying everything they need. But I think that the nutrition side of things and the hydration side of things will continue to evolve. And, I've talked to a lot of athletes, and like, man, back in the old days, I would just take my little packets of salt from McDonald's that I would take when I would go to get my thing. And then when I felt like I needed salt, I would just break open a packet and I'd lick it like this and I would have salt, and it's changed a lot since then. It's much more scientific. And I think that will continue on.
Yeah, that's great. I do see some innovations, always emerging and little tweaks, but I think we got the gist of lightweight packs down. The water temperature one is pretty interesting. Some sort of like a thermal bottle or thermal pockets or something along those lines.
Right.
Yeah,
without reducing capacity, things like that. It's like, how are we gonna handle that? Durability, weight is always something that people are striving for. But if you reduce too much weight, then you lose durability. There's always these things that we're looking at when we're trying to create, the ideal pack. And then the other thing is just the difference in body types and preferences as well too. That's one of the things that we've always tried to do, with our products is give people a choice. And do you want to carry soft flask, or do you like the more hybrid bottles that are partially soft? Do you want a bladder? Do you want the water in the back? Do you want the water in the front? Do you want it to ride high? Do you want it to ride low? And I think that by giving the athletes the option, it helps dial in their unique body shape, their preferences, their styles, things like that. And that's one thing because we kind of have packs that ride high, like the Bronco. We have packs that ride lower, like the Basham or the Alpha. And that's my personal preference because I like that. And when I took kinesiology classes in college, I learned about low center of gravity and tight against your back and keeping the weight low. And then I have these athletes that come along and they say, yeah, I don't really like my weight low. I want my weight high and up on my shoulders. I prefer that. And so hence the Bronco comes around, and that's how he likes it. And some people like their pockets right in the center. Some people like pockets wide open. And we've got sizing to accommodate that. But we kind of try to help. Being a small company, we try to give people options rather than just one style, one fit, just different capacities. We try to give options that are going to allow the athletes to dial in the choice to make them be more successful too.
Bryce, ultra running is growing like 300% year over year. We're seeing more participation. We're seeing more events. And UltrAspire is a huge part of that. You're making backpacks, you're making waist packs, you're making lighting systems that go, and all the lights are all over your heads or your waist. There's a couple handhelds. I mean, you've really nailed those markets. Do you see UltrAspire moving in any other directions as well in the space of ultra running or climbing or any other outdoor adventures? Do you see some side growth anywhere? Or are you looking to stay in the lane?
That's a really good question, and I get asked that a lot. A lot of my friends will say, like even my kids this weekend, we were rock climbing, and they're like, Dad, my mesh pockets need to be stronger because when I'm sliding my backpack down the mountain, the mesh pockets wear out. And it's like, well, any mesh pocket would wear out, and that's really kind of outside our lane. And so one of the things I need to give kudos to Joe Petty, my marketing director. He's been with me quite a while now, and he has been one that has really helped me focus because I want to stay a tight niche. I think this is the demise of many companies, especially when they're sold to a larger conglomerate. The larger conglomerate will want growth, and so they sometimes look horizontal for growth. It was a prime example that happened with me when I was with Nathan. We were doing a really good job of focusing in on race vests and handhelds and waist packs and stuff like this. And then suddenly we want to do this, and we want to do sunglasses, and we want to do gloves, and we want to do all these different things. And they want to be all things to all people. And so we've kind of said, well, right now we have two main lanes, lighting and packs, but they're all focused on really ultra. Our niche ultimately is 100-mile races and longer, or people that are doing FKTs on the trails on their own where they need to go self-supported and they want to move really efficiently in the mountains. So our decision has been just stay focused. We're calling it the laser approach, the sniper approach, not the shotgun approach, where it's like trying to be all things to all people. I can make anything. Well, I make my own stuff. Brian's probably seen it. I make my own little backpacks that I carry my computer in and stuff like that. And sometimes friends will get things like that. We really could make anything. We've got the factory set up. We've got the quality control set up. But then who are we? And I look at some other companies that make incredible products. I love Black Diamond, for example, as a company. They're a great company. I use a lot of their climbing equipment, stuff like that. But from the outside, when you look in, they've gone like this with their product line where they're doing shoes, they're doing clothing, they're not just doing hardcore climbing stuff anymore. They're doing packs, they're doing running packs, they're doing all this stuff. And then I think that they lose their identity as a brand when they go down that road and lose the authenticity. And I also think from a creative standpoint, it's really, really difficult to spend enough time to be able to do everything really well. And so what a lot of times these companies will do, and it drives me crazy because a lot of them will just copy outright our products because they don't. For example, most clothing companies and most shoe companies right now are making hydration packs. And they do it. They all make them. They're pretty and they're pretty colors and all that stuff. But a lot of times what they're doing is they're either copying us or one of the other main competitors, whether it's Solomon or Ultimate Direction or whoever. They're copying somebody else. They're throwing their label on it. They're having their fashion designers make the colors really pretty, and they're just duplicating. But they're really not adding a lot to the authenticity of their own brand. They're just saying, well, our brand is so popular, we throw a logo on anything and it will sell. And there's a lot of truth to that, but it also dilutes their market so much that who are they? Who are they anymore? And I don't want to go down that road. I want people to know who we are and what we do.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, I
fair.
think that's a great point. You have to have brand, recognition, but at the same time, you can have a critical mass, I think, to be in the right lane if it's the same athletes and it's not so tangent. I mean, and that's what you do to some extent. You know, you're not only doing running vest, like you're doing wasting, you're doing lights. It's kind of concentrated enough that
Yeah.
people, despite being a small company, when people say, do you have a running vest to recommend? Sure, they'll recommend Salomon Advanced 12, like that's go-to for most people, but they will also throw
Yeah.
UltrAspire. And you're not a big company, but people will associate running vest for ultra running to you guys. And then it's hard to know if you're going too much on a tangent of, you know, Apple doing anything. At some point they'll do some cars and like whatever. It's like, okay, like just put an Apple logo in it and like it will sell. That's not true. And sometimes it's shit product. But you're staying true to your vision. I think that's great. And you will, I mean, you're a great company leader. So you'll see if there is a tangent that like would make sense from a critical mass perspective that people would naturally associate that to. You know,
Right.
do you do handheld, for example? Like if you don't do handheld, like to me that would be something that was like that would make sense actually to me. But
Right.
yeah,
We do handhelds as well. And
yeah.
and I think that it's also a learning process as well too, because you know, we try to listen to our athletes. And if they come to us, I'll make prototypes for things. Like a good friend of mine, Ty Draney, he was doing one of those winter races where you pull a sled. And he said, will you make me a pack that's insulated that my bladder won't freeze, that I can hook my sled on the back of it, and that I can tow my sled? And I'm like, sure, I'll make it for you. And I made it for him, and it worked. And then he's like, okay, now, and then I have 3 other people come to me and say, now will you make me one? And then we look at the market, and even though we could do it, and it kind of fits in the endurance lane, we have to sometimes kind of back up and say, well, we're not a custom pack company. We couldn't stay in business doing that. If the market is big enough that we kind of have our threshold in volume. If the market's big enough that we could sell enough to make it worth the time, then we'll go with it. But there's been quite a few things. I mean, my office is full of samples that I built one-offs on.
Yeah.
That
It is.
we
It is,
show them
trust
to
me.
people. Yeah. I've got some pretty cool stuff in there, and sometimes I'll build them for myself, and I'm like, this is really cool. But then I've got an amazing team where I sit down with Joe and Zach and Danielle and Jody and other people, and I'll just say, what do you think of this? And I get all excited, and they're like, I'm not seeing it, you know. And then that's why we have our team, and then we have this closed Facebook group. It's really amazing, honestly, this closed Facebook group that I'll get on there and I'll say, look what I made, you know, and what do you guys think of it? And everybody is so active. They'll say, I like it, or no, I don't see a need for it, or no, let's do this. And so that's kind of our way of kind of filtering my crazy ideas that I come up with. But the reality is, when I first did the first waist light, I can remember one of my employees, they're just like, what are you talking about? We'll never sell any of those. And I'm like, well, I really want to try. Let's order at least 500 of them, you know, and let's try it. And I kind of had to push a little bit. I'm like, no, I really think this is going to go, you know, it's going to be a good deal. And it was a little bit of a battle inside the company to get it to go. But then now it's a big portion of our business. So sometimes you know, especially ideas that are way out there that have never been done, you know, that haven't been done before. And honestly, that's been one of my struggles my whole life is a lot of times my ideas are years ahead of what other people are doing. And if I introduce them too quick, then the market's not ready for them yet. And our lights, the lumens, the 3D lighting, the market was ready for it. But there are times, like some of the stuff that I did years ago with Nathan, I kind of chuckle. I was going through a trade show. I did a dual chambered bladder for Nathan. It was pretty dang cool years ago. And it had a little dial on it. It was cool, where you had one hose to drink out of, but it had this dial that you'd put right here, really small. And you could dial in. In one chamber of the bladder, you could put your fluids, or your water. The other chamber, you could put calories or electrolytes. And then you could change the dial, how much calories versus how much water you wanted, and then you would drink it out of the tube, and it would automatically mix it as you drink. Well, I thought it was a way cool idea. I did it like 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And now I saw somebody at a trade show recently and they're like, oh, we have this cool idea. It's brand new and we're going to get a patent on it. And it's like, oh, I did that 20 years ago, and so I think I've struggled with that part of my life as well too, is coming up with things that are a little bit too far ahead, of what's going on in the marketplace.
Yeah, but I think it's a super good sign of a healthy company if the CEO proposed something and people can say, "That's dumb." Like that's really dumb. What are you doing right now? And that's a good sign of a good CEO to say. Sometimes to say, "Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe I shouldn't," or sometimes say, "Hey, no, like, look, I'm gonna order the 500 lights. Watch me. I'll sell those." And then you're at the corner of the street. Those guys, please buy it.
Yeah,
I need to make a point.
exactly.
But
Yeah,
that's awesome. I
it's
mean,
kind of fun.
my crazy idea is that I love dogs on trail and they need their little pack. If one day you get into that market, that might not be the right time, but they need that. So dog
And
pack.
what is this?
Gosh,
I
What
need
is
that.
that? Oh, you. What do you need again? Say it one more time.
It's a little backpack for dogs.
Oh, I see. Okay, I missed that part.
I think that would work. I think you could be the company, guys.
There
I
you
might be
go.
ahead of
Oh,
my
gosh.
time, though.
There are so many size dogs.
Doesn't matter. We'll make it adjustable, like for athletes, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Bryce, I appreciate you diving into the business end of UltrAspire and kind of sharing the stories there. But I do want to maybe get one good story out of you, a personal story about you in the mountains, and maybe one or two of your best days ever in the mountains before we end the call tonight. I think that brings it back to the roots of how you found yourself here is being in the mountains, whether it's either on the rock or in your sneakers. And I'd love to hear just maybe one or two stories about your time in the mountains and some of your best experiences that you've had.
Yeah, okay. I have two that I can tell. The first one is obviously when I ran the Grand Teton, because I was a runner in high school. I can't say that I was the fastest, but I was a decent runner, and I just loved going in the mountains. And there was a point where my best friend at the time, still one of my best friends, he's 10 years older than me. In fact, I was climbing with him last night. Just a wonderful man. He's in his 70s now and still just climbing. But anyway, I was like 16, 17 years old, and he knew I was fast in the mountains because he was always having me carry the pack, and I was just like a workhorse because I could carry all the gear, and I was really fast moving uphill in the Tetons. And he says, you need to go after the record on the Grand Teton. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he says, no, there's a guy that holds the record on the Grand Teton and you need to go after it. And so with that, I actually met the guy, and Kim, my friend Kim, introduced me to him, and he just says, hey, this is my friend Bryce, and he's going to break your record on the Grand Teton. And he was this gnarly, tan, climbing ranger, the kind of guy that lives every day in the mountains, and that's all he does is climb. And he held the record on the Grand Teton. And then I'm this young kid, that's, and he just looked at me and he just says, good luck, kid. And I'm like, okay. And that's basically all it took. And so really, I think I've done it twice, but the first time in the Grand Teton, it was very unofficial. The way I had this little Timex stopwatch, and because I'm climbing, I never wore it on my wrist. I, again, modified my watch, made a leash for it so that I could wear it inside my running shirt so that I could still keep my time. But it was totally, drove to the parking lot myself, no GPS, ran to the top of the mountain, cotton shorts, cotton T-shirt, a stopwatch around my neck. And it was almost an out-of-body experience because I was able to move so fast. And especially when I got onto the technical terrain, where on the Grand Teton, the technical terrain is such that if you fall, you're dead. And there's just no way around it. There's 3,000 feet of exposure, and I'm doing it in a pair of running shoes. But the ability to focus so deeply and to be so tight in your mind, and to feel so in control in an environment that is so out of control. And then coming down off the mountain, when I reached the summit, I actually put the trail registry on top to show that I made it to the summit. So that was my proof that I made it there. Timed myself, came down. I was coming down off the glacier, and I was literally on my old Brooks Vantage running shoes. I was skiing down the glacier on my Brooks Vantage running shoes. And I would ski, 4 or 5 turns, and I was doing these little parallel turns in my Brooks Vantage running shoes, and then I would kind of hiccup a little bit, and then I'd jump, and people thought that there was people just watching from the side, and they thought that I was falling because I was coming so fast. I think I did a half a mile in like 2 minutes, down this glacier, but at the same time, being in the environment that I was so focused and so inside my head, and that I felt totally in control, even though from the outside I looked so out of control. And that was an incredible experience. And it was after that I reflected upon it, and I was sitting on the lazy boy at my parents' house after, and I think for a week after, the exertion level was so high, because it's almost 14,000 feet, that you could see my heart beating in my temples for like 2 weeks after, just from fatigue. But that was a really cool experience for me. And then another experience, and I know I've taken a lot of your guys' time, but another experience, another wonderful friend of mine, Jim Knight, still a great friend of mine. He came to me, and this would have been, I think, in 1987, maybe, or maybe been a little bit later than that. And he just says, I want to do the whole Wind River Range, but I don't have a week to do it. And he just says, why don't we just do it in a day or something like that? And I'm like, okay, how far is it? And he says, well, it's 110 miles. And I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. And he says, but we need a pack to carry it. And so I literally went in, built a prototype pack that could carry a small sleeping bag. We used a tiny little sleeping bag, a little shelter, carry all of our food, carry a filter, a couple of bottles, things like that. And then we went out, we did the Wind River Range, and it was, again, just an incredible experience, because it was just he and I in the middle of nowhere, totally all by ourselves, totally self-supported. And we were, at the time, we were able to pull off. It took us 38 hours, but it included sleep time. We actually slept all night and then got up and went again the next day. And he was the one, honestly, that first coined the term fast packing. He wrote a wonderful article for Ultra Running Magazine when it used to just be a little, a black and white, publication. And he talked about the ability to move fast in the mountains, and again, way ahead of his time. And that was an incredible experience for me as well, too, just being able to realize that if you select your gear right, and if you go really light, almost for the same effort, you can cover a lot more distance than you can if you're carrying the wrong gear and the wrong weight. And so that was an incredible experience for me, too, when we were able to do that, the Wind River Range in really, really a fast time. It's been broken many times since then, but that was another incredible experience for me. But it also helped me realize, because that pack that I built for us to set the record on the Wind River Range, that same pack the very next year was used by the winner of the Norwegian Birkebeiner, both male and female, because it was so efficient biomechanically. And it's a race where you have to carry, it has mandatory gear, like a lot of times they do in Europe. It had mandatory gear at the time, because it was so efficient, the pack. And so that's the beauty of the sport. And it's the beauty of pushing the envelope, continuing to push the envelope for time, speed, efficiency, but always keeping in mind safety as well, too. I think sometimes people sacrifice safety, because there's some people that really go minimalist, and they're like, I can train to go without water, and I can train to go without this, and I don't need to carry a backup jacket because nothing's going to happen to me. And it's like, no, let's all be safe still, too. So
Those are great stories, Bryce. I really appreciate you sharing those with us. It's obvious that you're well ahead of the curve of ultra running as an ultra runner back in the day, and it stands out and it's apparent.
Yeah, thank you.
Bryce, where can I'm sure it's ultraspire.com, but where can our listeners follow you at?
Yeah. Ultraspire.com would be where they could follow us. We'd love to hear from everybody. Just send us an email. Customer service at ultraspire.com would be a good way to get a hold of us. And if you have ideas, we listen to every idea. We can't make custom packs for everybody, but I listen to everybody, honestly. And that's one thing that, we listen to every customer. We listen to the complaints, the concerns, the problems. And that's, we appreciate the feedback when people get a hold of us. So yeah, please reach out to us anytime.
I can confirm that that is the absolute truth. I've had nothing but great experiences with you guys in the last 5 years that I've been on the team. Gosh, the customer service is tenfold above, leaps and bounds above what you would even be acceptable. And so it just stands out in all you guys do. I appreciate your willingness to come on the show and share with us. I appreciate again you're showing up at Cocodona and helping out and supporting the event firsthand with a small team to work in aid station and support our community and all that you do in the community as well.
Thank you very much. You guys are amazing. Honestly, that was an incredible race, and it was fun seeing you out there. It made me smile.
Great. Well, thanks for being on the show, and really a true pioneer and a true passion of the sport all these years. It's absolutely wonderful to have a discussion with you about all of that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon, Bryce. Take care.
Thank you.
I'm Simon, and that's Brian.
We'd be thrilled to connect with you beyond our show.
For all of your endurance coaching requirement, you can reach out to Coach Brian at altitudeendurancecoaching.com.
To explore more of Simon's content, visit Running with Simon on YouTube.
Don't forget to rate, like, and share our content regularly.
Your support means a lot to us. Thanks.